This podcast is brought to you by Blackaby Ministries International. To find out more, visit blackaby.org.
Well, welcome to the very first Richard Blackaby Leadership Podcast.
Happy New Year
of 2021. You've made it. 2020 is behind us.
Hallelujah.
And hopefully all of the uncertainty and pain that 2020 brought can be closed. That chapter can be closed, and a new year stretches out before us here. And I think we've done this every year since we started the podcast, but there's just something. I know you are a big fan of new things, mm-hmm. and especially New Year's, because you have a whole new year that you haven't spoiled yet, and you get to.
You may still have kept your diet up to this time of this podcast, but
hopefully you have, and it's a time for new beginnings. And so, with that in mind, we want to start the year off looking at new things.
Yeah, and of course, as you said, really, New Year's is simply a day on a calendar. It's, any day of your life, you can wake up one day and decide to do something new. You don't have to wait till New Year, but there is something about a reset that happens every January 1st that, to me, I don't want to overplay a day on the calendar, but I do want to grasp the opportunity to say, but any chance I have to make a healthy decision in my life, my organization, why would I not take that opportunity?
Yeah.
I've talked about my mother a number of times, but she makes me think a lot about God in different ways. When I was younger in trouble, she made me think heavenward a couple of times. I thought she was sending me there, but my mother now struggles with technology, and as you know, Sam, you've been called in to help. But with her phone, she'll say, I'll get a call, and she'll say, well, Richard, my phone's not working, and people tell me they're calling me, and it doesn't ring, and there's this, there's that. And so the first thing I always tell her is, okay, Mom, have you turned off your phone recently? Just turned it right off and turned it back on. Because that, usually with my mother, that things get so clogged up and so many apps running and so on, that she just needs to just shut everything down and basically reset. And that so far has about 95% of the time has fixed her problem. And so when she calls in a tither about that, nothing's working, I'll say, well, okay, Mom, have you turned it off? Oh, yeah, that's right. You always tell me to do that. Yeah, so do that now. I'm hanging up so you can turn your phone off. And then I'll get a call. It seems to be working now. And I mean, it's a simple little technological thing, but it's just amazing to me sometimes how shutting certain things off, turning and resetting has a real powerful effect. And so whether it's a new phone, and I don't know what it is about just new things anyway, but like, you know, I've had iPhones for a while now. I've had several of the numbers over the years. And you get a new iPhone. I don't know of course, Apple has made billions of dollars making it a really exciting thing to get a new phone.
Yeah.
But and a lot of times, a lot of the apps are the same. A lot of the software is the same. It's just, it looks nicer. It might be a little sleeker. The camera quality might be just a little bit better. But there's just something about new things. And it's not entirely new. It's not like it's completely different. A lot of the stuff is the same. It's like getting a new car, you know. It's got a steering wheel. It's got brakes. A lot of things are the same. But boy, the smell of a new car. Just everything. There's not a scratch. It's... Now, the old car could probably still get you where you need to go, but boy, there's something about the new smell, the new look, the new sound, just the way cars come along, and you don't have all the rattles of your last car. And there's something about it being new and fresh that is very seductive sometimes. And so my thought was, what would it look like to have a new version of you? The 2021 version of Sam Camp. Does it smell better? Does it look
Definitely.
better? Is it sleeker?
Check
Is
and
it bigger?
Stronger, more intelligent.
Yeah. Well, we can only hope.
So hard.
Yeah, we and I want to overplay that, but to say, think for a moment what that would look like if you sort of came out in 2021 a newer version of you, a slightly improved. Maybe I keep hoping for more memory. Isaiah 43 verses 18, 19, some powerful verses to me. God says, "Do not remember the past events. Pay no attention to things of old. Look, I'm about to do something new. Even now it is coming. Do you not see it? Indeed, I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." And I love that whole concept of, behold, look, I'm going to do something new.
Yeah.
God delights in doing new things. And I think if you're truly following after God, you're going to be experiencing some new things. But I can tell you, I've been around Christians all my life, and I'm around some folks that year in and year out, nothing really changes.
Mm-hmm.
It's, every time that this person comes around, you know what to expect. It may not be bad, but it's going to be what you've always gotten from them. And, there's something to be said for consistency, but at the same time, is there nothing new? How can you follow this God who said, forget about the past, behold, I'm going to do something new? How can you be following that God and then never have any new dimension to your life in any way? And so when you get to a new year, I just always tend to want to stop and take a little bit of inventory. Maybe while you're off work or you're not going in on New Year's Day, maybe you had the week between Christmas and New Year's off, and maybe you've just had a little bit of time. Pull away, get out your Bible, get out a pen and paper, and just prayerfully ask God, in what areas of my life do you want to do a new thing? And it may not be entirely different. It just might be a little bit of an upgrade. It just might be a tweak here or there. But the next time that your friends see you coming for coffee to join them, the next time people at church see you walking in the door, will they notice something different, better about you? The way you conduct yourself, the way you talk, the way you look, the way you act. What will be different about you? And so I want to look at just 4 areas in particular. Of course, there's lots of areas that you could do something new in, but I'll just look at 4. And of course, the first one is just your walk with God. You don't want to have the exact same walk with God in 2021 that you had in 2020. And you may have had an awesome walk with God last year.
Yeah.
But with God, there's always something new that he can do. And so there are things that he will do, that he will initiate in your life that you have no control over. You probably couldn't even imagine. But there are some things that you could do to kind of help, take action where you can. And so I would say, for instance, in your walk with God, in your quiet times, maybe this is a year to get a different Bible translation. And I know for a lot of folks, that is just scandalous. They've always used this translation. I'm not saying that you give it up. If you're a King James person, you may want to kind of hold on to that as your main study Bible. But sometimes just get maybe a more modern translation that you can just read through, and perhaps you'll just, with maybe a little more modern language, you'll catch some things that you hadn't noticed before. It may be just, you've got a modern translation, but this guy, it just has a different sound to it, a little fresher look. Mm-hmm. Maybe you've used the same devotional book for some time and you love it. It speaks to you. You've got it all marked up. Maybe it's a Blackaby devotional book. And so then you want to keep using that.
But naturally.
But even if it's a Blackaby devotional book, I think at some point, at least pull out a different one. Maybe you keep using the Blackaby one, but pull out another one as well.
Yeah.
I tend to do that lately. I've come across various ones over the years, and some I found in my dad's library that were tucked away in there, and I thought, I'm just going to use that this year along with other stuff just to get a different perspective from one of the saints of old. And that can really do a lot. There are different Bible reading plans where maybe you read, maybe not the whole Bible, but you're going to really zero in on the Psalms this year, and you read some each day, or maybe the prophets. I'm not a big fan of just trying to race through the whole Bible, but maybe you're going to do that. Just find a different plan than what you used last year. Don't just always do the same thing. It could be that you have a prayer journal, but this year you're going to do something a little different. Maybe you always just prayed over for the same missionaries, the same family members, and so on, the same government officials. And this year, maybe you have some helps that will help you pray differently for maybe people that you don't normally pray for, or maybe a different focus of prayer, a different way of praying, that just changes it up. Doesn't mean you have to do that for the rest. It's not a life sentence. It just means for this year, I'm just going to completely change maybe the way I even pray for people. And maybe now I'm going to, pray through some scriptures for people, or I'm going to ask God to do some different kinds of things than I normally ask him to do. Instead of just to God be with everybody and bless everybody, I'm going to pray very specifically these things for my loved ones. It may be scripture memory. Maybe you're not a big fan of memorization, but this year you'd want to memorize maybe 20 verses, and so you've got 20 index cards, and maybe there's a new way of doing it. Maybe you've got it digital somehow you can listen to as you're driving just over and over again. But you're determined that before the year's out, you're going to have just committed some new scriptures to your memory. Maybe you're going to get up earlier in the morning. You're going to really try this year. Maybe you can't sustain it for the next decade, but for this year, you're going to just try having a quiet time earlier in the morning, or maybe in the evening at a certain point before going to bed. And there are lots of apps out there that can give you a devotional thought on your phone every morning. They can put a scripture out there that they can read it to you so it's out loud. Lots of really creative apps out there now that you could download and just look at what they have to offer. Ask around, ask friends and colleagues what they're using, and just try something new this year, because you just want a fresh infusion into your walk with God. And then a second thing is just your health, and of course there's lots to say about that. I'm just this past year, 2020, I joined a running club with my wife and my son Daniel, and the three of us, over the course of 2020, the three of us combined ran 2,020 miles. And so, and I'd never been in a running club before. No one ever wanted me in their club before. But when COVID hit last year, I had like 41 trips canceled, so all of a sudden I was home a lot more, and I decided to join their club. And it really wasn't until probably the end of March that I joined their club, so I kind of had missed the first quarter almost, and so I had some catching up to do. But I can proudly tell you that in the course of 2020, I ended up running 600 miles, which for me is huge. I can't believe that, like 600 miles. I lost a little over 30 pounds, and I tell you what, I just felt way better. I was actually putting on some suit jackets and things that I had sort of put off to the side in my closet, like, I'll take a look at that
one day.
One day that's won't be quite so snug. Those buttons will actually come together and you'll be able to button it up again.
Yeah.
And so I'll tell you what, I felt like a new me. And when you saw me coming into some places, I'm wearing a blazer that I actually had for a couple of years. I just had never worn it before. And so I do look different. I look slimmer. I've got different clothes. It's a new me. And some of that's also just eating habits. There's things that going into 2021, my son Daniel, for the last 2 years, he went on a junk food fast, if you will. He just decided that for 2 years, he just wouldn't eat any junk. He wouldn't go through any like drive-throughs and just eat a burger from a drive-through. And so even when I would have stuff like someone gave me a bag of chicken biscuits, from Chick-fil-A. Well, those are divine experiences. So I brought some over to his house to say, hey, do you and your boys want to have them while they're warm? And his boys wolfed them down, but he said, no, I'm on my second year of my junk food fast, and I didn't realize Chick-fil-A was considered junk food, or fast food, I should say. Maybe junk's the wrong word, fast food. But what?
That takes some willpower to decline a fresh chicken biscuit from Chick-fil-A.
But I'll tell you, and we live in the South, of course, and I know folks that carry some extra weight, but they'll eat salads at the salad bar and so on, but they just can't quit drinking sweet tea. And that sweet tea, that's just like mainlining sugar water right into your system.
Yeah.
And you can eat all the salads you want, but if your beverage of choice is sweet tea, you're going to always have some extra tonnage that you're carrying around.
For sure.
And so, I know people that just say, I'm just not going to drink a soft drink this year. If you drink and I'll be honest with you, we can get on this hobby horse, but like to drink a regular Coke is craziness. There's so many studies that show you that mainlining sugar into your system is going to hurt your brain, it's going to hurt your heart, it's going to hurt just so many things.
Yeah.
That to be doing that is craziness. I'll tell you I very timidly do I ever hold myself up as an example of healthy choices, but my wife and I both, and you as well, you like Perrier, like carbonated waters.
Yeah.
And I like that. And I don't know if carbonation is there's health issues related to that, but what I like about it is it's got kick. If you because every time you come over to my office, you can pull one out of the fridge.
Yeah.
There's kick to
Rightfully
it.
so.
It's refreshing. It's cold. It has punch to it, but there's no calories.
Yeah.
And there's no aspartame and all those kind of chemicals, fake sugar stuff. And so it's basically you're drinking water that's got this punch to it, but there's no calories and all the additive kind of things. And so I'll tell you, because we've got a good friend that loves his Diet Cokes.
Oh yeah.
But there's a lot of studies to show the effects on your brain with all the additives and the fake sugars and so on. So this might just be a year where you decide, look, for a year. And so I'm just going to recommend, find a healthy kind of soda water, whether it's a Perrier or I'm not sure Perrier is the best version. I get a cheaper kind at Kroger, but find something that does sort of quench your thirst, but just isn't adding a bunch of sugars and additives into your system by just the cup load, and just see what that does to you. Because I've known people that were like big Diet Coke drinkers, and then their memory started kind of going on them, and they were having all kinds of brain issues, and they just backed off of Diet Coke, and all of a sudden they started to clear up some for them, or they just cut out just regular Coke and they dropped 10 pounds right away.
Well, the great thing is it doesn't have to be dramatic. Like you don't have to necessarily cut out meat or bread or something like that, but you can.
That'd be crazy.
That would be crazy. Let's not get too wild here. But there are, I think one nice way to look at it is just what are some simpler, easier things that you can do, but you can sustain over a year.
Yeah, and I think that's what Dan did with just fast food. He thought, they're not like they eat out a lot anyway, and I think that's something you could say, you know what, okay, I no sweet tea or no regular Coke this year. I'll find a substitute that still I can drink. Water is still like a great go-to kind of source.
I recommend it.
I know that they say it's better to drink it kind of room temperature. I like my beverages cold or hot. Well, it's either coffee, or latte, or it's or cold. But find, and you don't need a list of 20 things you're going to try to do.
Yeah.
Find one or two. and then sustain those for an entire year.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, if you've not drunk, say regular Coke or sweet tea, and you lose 20 pounds over the course of this year, just because all that sugar is not in your system, you're going to be glad that you made a tweak. And if you make a one or two healthy choices every year that you can sustain for the whole year, it adds up over time.
And I'll bet by the end of the year, you're not really going to miss whatever it is that you've
And when you look at yourself in the mirror, and you just have more energy, you're thinking sharp, you're gonna realize the benefits definitely outweighed the sacrifice.
Definitely. Well, let's take a quick break here, and we'll finish up the new things when we come back. Experiencing God has touched the lives of millions of people. We've recently developed this study into an online class that you can take with people from around the world. There is video content specific for this online class, along with a live stream Q&A with the Blackabees. Registration is open now for the next class, which runs from January 11th to April 4th. Register and find out more at blackabee.org/online classes. Links will be in the show notes. Well, welcome back to the New Year, New You podcast. But we're talking about new things and what that means for yourself, for your family, for your health, for your walk with God. We've got a couple more here before we wrap up.
Yeah, and because this is a leadership podcast, I think a third one would be, what new things can you add to your leadership,
I think that's
your
a great
toolbox? And one thing, of course, is maybe in the course of 2021, it wouldn't hurt you to schedule a session or two with a leadership coach. Get with a coach, a professional, and let them give you a bit of a checkup and see what issues perhaps are coming to the surface, and then address. Say, okay, maybe in January, February, you get with a coach and you identify 3 issues that are harming your leadership, that they're just keeping you from being as effective as you should be. And then come up with a plan over the course of the year to improve in those areas. I tell you, get a reading list of some of the best leadership books out there, and maybe read one a month, read one a week. My boys last year, I think they both hit, about 52 books that they read over the course of the year. If you can read a book a week, you're doing very well. But even if you read a leadership book once a month, if you can sort of infuse 12 good, insightful books on leadership into your leadership, your thinking over the course of the year, that's great. Maybe there's a leadership podcast besides this one. I mean, it would be a step down,
think of
but,
none, but I'm sure they're out there.
Once you've listened to us and you still got time on your hands, find some good leadership podcasts to be listening to, and as I said earlier, find some issues that you could improve on. Yeah. I know some leaders that just have done a sorry job, really, of identifying and developing other leaders in their organization. I know pastors who they do all the work, and I see, especially in smaller churches, pastors that lead the singing, do the preaching, make the announcements, pretty well do everything. And it's not that there aren't people there that could have been enlisted and equipped and trained, but the pastor just was not giving much effort into identifying people and recruiting and developing and encouraging and thanking them. And so they still are doing way too much of the work. And there's business people as well that they're still doing stuff that they could have delegated off to some junior members and some associates. And so maybe this is a year to say, it's just time. I got more serious about developing other leaders in my organization. There's a lot of leaders who do a poor job of running meetings. Meetings get started late. They don't have an agenda. They tend to wander. People dominate and hijack conversations, or you meet, but then you never seem to really get that follow through to action. And you might just say, you know what, this is a year I'm going to really get serious about running a tighter meeting, a more effective meeting. Maybe it's a stand-up meeting where I'm better prepared. We get down to business right away. People know we're going to hit the ground running, and I'm going to expect results and follow through. We'll have minutes, whatever. We've got to do a better job of our meetings. For some leaders, they need to improve their public speaking, and we've had a couple of podcasts where we've talked about that.
Yeah.
But just getting in front of a group, maybe it's just kind of giving a little 5-minute talk to your leadership team around the board table, or maybe it's calling all your staff together. Maybe it's putting out memos. But you realize, I put out a bunch of unnecessary information, or it's very uninspiring the way it's facts, but it's not very creative. There ought to be more creative ways of communicating with my staff and other people. So maybe this year you just really give some time to that, and you get a coach, or you have someone video a talk or two that you gave, and you bring it to a professional, and they break it down for you, and they help you see how you could improve. And every speaker develops bad habits, and for the best, most experienced ones, I speak for a living, and I've always got stuff that creeps in, and I realize it even as I'm saying certain things. It's like, why did I say that? That's like, that just diminished and took away from the whole thing I was trying to say. It happens to everybody, and so this might be a year to say I've let too much time go by where I let a lot of clutter develop in my public speaking, and I want to get crisper and more focused. And then maybe one last one is just, maybe this is a year that you become better at customizing your thank yous. At Christmas time, it just passed, and I've had. That tends to be a time where people send gifts and Christmas cards and notes, and some people are very thoughtful in finding ways just to thank people for the role they've had in their life, and I'm always a little inspired by some of the creativity people put into the way that they thank you, and they'll send maybe a gift. Here's a whole pancake, breakfast meal kit. Hey, thank you for doing this for me in this past year. And maybe as a leader, you realize I should probably do a better job. I've never been that great at that. Like, just not that creative in those kind of areas.
I never got a pancake breakfast.
Oops. But I'll get my wife, or I'll talk to other staff. I used to have an administrative assistant when I was running a seminary that was good at that. And but if you're not creative at it, then get help. Find someone and change it up. Cash is always great, but there's creative ways as well to just recognize people's contributions and identify it and let people know you're really appreciative of that, especially I'll tell you, when you work with volunteers, and you're not giving them bonus checks, then the way you creatively thank people is huge. And so that's something that's worth not just taking for granted, but working at.
Well, and I think like what we said with the health changes before the break, I think with changing your leadership, if you just say, I want to improve my leadership this year, that's overwhelming, and you probably won't. Mm-hmm. But if you hone in on one area, say, I'm going to be better at showing my gratitude for my team, that's something you can change. Yeah. If it's, I'm going to be a more succinct giver of speeches at work, like, that's something that you can change. And that's what's great about your list there, is that you don't have to become an overall better leader, but you can change these small things that are specific, actionable, and over time, they do produce a better leader. And so I think that's encouraging to see. Yeah, and it's leadership is a lifelong calling. It's, you don't just get it all perfect right away. It's an ongoing process. And even the most experienced leaders, we've shared before, I work with some CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and they've got MBAs from some of the top leadership schools, and they have a huge staff and great track record, and yet they have a leadership coach, and they go to training like that I provide, and they're still trying to grow and learn. And so don't be hard on yourself, but identify, again, a handful of things and nail those handful of things down,
And if you get those all done, then you can get another handful. But don't try to change much more than a handful at a time.
Yeah.
And the last thing I would just throw out there, just for your consideration, would be maybe there's some new things in your relationships that could change. And if I were God, and I'm sure you're glad I'm not, but if I were,
Amen.
and I wanted to radically change something about your life, one of the perhaps the most straightforward ways I could do that would be just to introduce a new relationship into your life. Maybe give you a new friend, a prayer partner, a colleague at work, somebody that would rub up against you and contribute a different perspective to you, maybe just an upbeat attitude, maybe some characteristic that they were really good at that you needed to have in your life as well. And so I'm always kind of wondering, is there maybe a new relationship out there? Sometimes it's not, the kind of relationship that you're physically with all the time. It could be that you're listening to their podcasts, or you're someone that you just communicate with periodically, but you're getting your life next to them in some kind of relationship form. Yeah. But I would encourage you to consider, is there a new relationship that for this year would really add some value to your life, and especially your leadership, that by being around them you feel like you could gain and grow as a leader? And then conversely, now this is going to really sound harsh, but are there some relationships in your life that have grown stale, that perhaps are even negative? Whenever you get around them, you come away more cynical, more negative, maybe angry. I've got some people in my life I don't necessarily spend a lot of time around, but there's some that when I'm with them, it can put me in a bad mood. It can bring out some un-Christ-like thoughts for me, where I'm like, wow, I don't like what that person does to me. And do I really need to be around that person? Is there any value in that? Is there a calling? Or is it just a habit? I've just always had that relationship in my life. And maybe part of having room in my life for a new relationship means I need to end some other ones, or back away from some. And part of maybe improving your life is just upgrading some of the people you're spending time with, and getting rid of some negative ones. And I'll tell you, there's some people that, especially 2020, just made them quite cynical, quite negative, and very outspoken. There's some folks, every time you get around them, they want to wax eloquent about their views of politics or COVID or other things. And at a certain point, it's like, okay, that's fine, but like, I'm kind of tired of just talking about the same things all the time. Yeah. And so maybe you need to be around some people who are going to talk about other things that are more uplifting to you, more transformative. And so again, while we're early into this new year, this is the time to consider that. And maybe there's someone at your church that's really upbeat, really positive, always smiling, and you don't know them very well, but you just think, you know what, every time I'm around that person, I feel charged up. I feel encouraged. And I think maybe that would be the kind of person maybe God wants me to spend some more time with this year. Maybe I need to go for coffee with them, or just get to know them, or maybe our families can do something together. But think about early on, if there's not someone that God's put in your orbit, that he may have put them around your life for a reason, and there's something you can gain by spending more time around them.
Well, that's great. Well, the year is young, and we hope you all are able to make those positive changes as we try as well in our lives to make this the best year we've had.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If this is something you enjoyed, it really makes a difference if you leave a review and a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. We always love hearing from our listeners, so email us at podcast@blackaby.org.